Hi folks, welcome to another episode of Lost and Founder. Thank you again to everyone who's been tuning in so far. I really appreciate every single listen, every download, every subscribe that people are giving me. And I know that people are doing that because people keep messaging me, and it's fantastic to hear that people are listening, but also to hear that some of this is resonating as well with others. And so yeah, this whole process is really, I'm doing it to help me, but I'm hoping it will help others too. And yes, again, you're not alone. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. One of the things I want to promise on this podcast is to try and be as honest as I possibly can be every time I hit record. And this week, I've got to be honest, I've been feeling really, really worried about things. And I think this is something that all founders, well, a lot of people in any job, but like especially people with responsibility for running a team, for managing a team, for paying other people's salaries have. And this week I've really been feeling to a point where I've been feeling physically sick with worry about various things, whether it's about company things, whether it's about what I'm gonna say to the team, whether it's about how I'm communicating things, whether it's receiving feedback that's hard to digest. I've felt like my body and my mind has been taking a lot of feedback on board and had to go through a lot to try to move things forward. And I guess I wanted to talk about this because those feelings are difficult. That feeling of being anxious, of worried, of feeling physically worried about things. Those feelings in the short term are, I think, actually indicative of a wider, larger, more positive thing, which is movement and change. And I am confident that when I am feeling those things, it's an opportunity to grow and develop. In the same way, when you work out and you work different muscles for the first time, I don't know, like when you do a skipping workout for the first time, as I mentioned last week, you work different muscles and those muscles start to hurt and can maybe feel a bit sore for a bit, but that's part of those muscles starting to develop and grow, and they need to tear to come back stronger. And I kind of have been thinking about some of this stress and fear I've had on my mind is, okay, in the short term it is painful, but actually I'm becoming stronger thanks to that process I'm going through. And every time I have that fear, I'm doing something that scares me. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. I'm not going to say that, but it's definitely an opportunity for me to grow and develop as an individual and as a leader. And I think that's how I've been trying to work my way through some very difficult times over the last few weeks. Another thing to combat that I also wanted to talk about was around just things that work for me to try to combat fear, anxiety, those feelings that I know every now and again, whether it's a difficult meeting or maybe it's a presentation we have to give. Everyone gets stressed and worked up by these things. So, I try to keep reminding myself that I'm never alone. But one of the things I've been finding on days where I really am feeling low is to just try to do something to counteract that. And every single time I do exercise, it does counteract that in some way, shape or form. And so I mentioned last week that I bought a skipping rope, and I've actually managed to get out skipping every single day since then, which has been pretty crazy. I still don't think I can skip, but I've been doing it, and every day, 10, 15, 20 minutes, I've been getting a little bit better, a little bit stronger, and I've kept doing it. And I think there's a lot of correlations there with real life. Like, we're pretty much always rubbish at something when we do it for the first time, whether that's skipping or whether it's drawing a picture or writing a blog post or playing the... And you're never going to get better if you give up after that first time. You're not going to get better if you do it 10 times, but you're probably going to get better if you do it 100 times. And so baking that in to my day has been really helpful, and I've doing that day in, day out has helped me keep doing it and keep getting. And that kind of takes me on to another kind of point I was going to talk about, which was another thing that's been helping me with getting through some tough times has been having a strong routine and schedule. And I may have mentioned this before, but one of the things I always used to be rubbish at was getting up in the mornings. I still don't necessarily love mornings quite as much as some people, but I used to always consistently go to bed too late, and then I would wake up too late, and I would start my day badly, and the whole cycle would rinse and repeat. And one of the things I've really been trying to do is stick to a rigorous routine to help me just stay focused and bring my best self to work and to life. And so having that routine and that schedule has been really valuable for getting through some tough times. And I think when you have some of those foundations in place and that structure, that those guardrails, I guess you could call them, when you have that stuff in place, it can be an incredibly valuable asset to get you through times when a lot of other things might be going crazy or off the rails or going differently to how you might normally want them to go. There's a lot of things that might be out of your control in daily life, but think about the things you can control. And for me, generally, my routine is one of those things, and I've been trying to make sure I exert that control as much as I can. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on a few of those things, and hope that's helpful for getting through any tough times you might have as well, either in the coming days or weeks or months. The second part of the episode, I really wanted to talk about kind of a mix of things that are all on my mind, and I was trying to think of the right order to talk these through in, and I'm really struggling to piece them together. So hopefully you can bear with me and we can work through this together, and we'll see what order they come out in. I mentioned I've been feeling pretty worried and pretty anxious about things, and I think that's part and parcel of having made some tough decisions in the last couple of weeks, maybe having made a few things that could have made a few decisions that could have been better. I don't know. But I think another thing that's happened is a real clarification for me in terms of the goals I have for the company and that we have as founders. And I think not only have I been clearer on the goals, but also clearer on the timeline for them. And goal setting in itself sounds incredibly corporate, I think, in terms of as a phrase. So, but I think it's one of those things that's incredibly difficult. Or at least I find incredibly difficult as a leader, because, well, for so long we've been running Go Squared as a company that's a real pleasure to work at, and I think often it's easy to lose sight, or I find it easy to lose sight sometimes, between building a great place for people to work and a place that people truly love working together and having a wonderful team, versus growing the business and really reminding myself that it's not a it's not a game, it is a business. It is really a business, and businesses have to make money and they spend money, and people choose whether or not they want to work at those businesses. And And I think sometimes in startup life and startup culture, some of those boundaries get blurred. You know, there's so much talk of culture, of vision, of of perks, I guess. There's so much talk around a lot of areas of business that in startups that maybe aren't as common in other types of businesses when you move outside of the world of tech. And I think sometimes it's very hard to navigate how much to pay attention to a lot of the startup narrative, the classic tech company highlights, versus how much to pay attention to building a true business. And I think a lot of people are on this journey as well, and figuring this out. I know that it's something I've continued to try to figure out over the many years of running the company. And part of the reason why I like doing what I do and working at Go Squared is choosing a great bunch of people to work with, and choosing to do things to run the company as a company that I myself would also want to work at. But I think sometimes it helps to step back and remind yourself that you're not doing this purely for fun. You're doing it to build a business, and that business traditionally needs to make more money than it spends. You know, sometimes you reinvest all of your profit into growth, into product, into whatever. Sometimes you run for years and years and years without any profit, and you find other ways to bring money in, whether that's investment or whatever. And so recently I've been thinking about this a lot and getting a lot clearer on what I want for the future of the company. And I would say setting some goals for the business that have been clearer and more deliberate than they have in a long time, and trying to work through that and how best to relay that. And some of that's been really hard, and it's been quite a sudden change, I think, to how we've run the company in the past. And part of my process for doing some of this was to give people a little bit more context in some of those changes. I've been trying to, at least. And so giving people a bit more transparency in context in why those decisions were made. And that's been another area which has been a sticking point for me in the past, of how much transparency to have with the entire team, and not just my co-founders. I try to be as transparent as possible with everyone, but like particularly there are certain things you work through as co-founders that you maybe don't work through with employees and other team members. And I think there's a lot of different companies out there that have different approaches, but there's some companies that are radically transparent and share everything, and there are some companies that share almost nothing with their team members. And I think neither one of those is necessarily right or wrong. It works for different companies, different teams. And I think my stance generally in the history of running Go Squared has always been to be transparent where I feel it can help, but also to make sure I don't lumber the entire team with all of the fears and worries and data that maybe they don't need or don't want. And also to be very conscious of how that comes across to different team members. You know, different team members want different things. Some people want to know all the details because they find it interesting and fascinating. Some people just want to get on with the job and would rather not know about that stuff. It's just another thing to think about or worry about, so would rather not know. And so that's been something I've been trying to think about for a long time, and I've tended to stick on the side of being open with many things, but certain numbers that I haven't necessarily shared. And in the last few weeks I've actually been changing this up a little bit and sharing a few numbers and data points that perhaps were not as clear before to everyone. And my goal with that has been really to try and not to worry people, but I'm aware it may well do, but more to get people on the same page about the journey we're on as a company, and and bring people into the fold and help them understand why I'm making certain calls, and to hopefully enable them to make better calls themselves and develop their own decision making with better data. Because I can't expect other people to make brilliant decisions and quick decisions if they don't have even a fraction of the information that I have to hand. But it's hard. It's hard, and I'm still trying to find the right way to go about this, and I still have a lot to learn on this. But I think from my perspective, what it's enabled me to do is help clarify to everyone what's important. And so the transparency, giving more context, and getting clearer on the goals and the timeline of those goals. I think it's much clearer to me what's important, and I'm hoping that it becomes clearer to everyone else. And I think there's a sort of cascading effect of that, which is, I've certainly been looking at the business in very different ways over the last few weeks and realizing that so much of what I had previously worried about, or that collectively as a team we've worried about or spent time on, so much of it actually doesn't matter, or just isn't important enough to work on right now. And that everyone says in startups, in companies, focus. And often the challenge is to figure out what to focus on. And I think you can always be seeking more focus. But I think right now I feel very focused in my goals and my timeline. I still want to get more focused about some of the how of achieving those. But I think you got to start somewhere, and by starting somewhere you initiate that chain reaction of events, and I think that's kind of what I've been doing in the last few weeks. And I don't have a crystal ball. No one does. But I think the best way to figure things out and make progress is to keep doing, and to iterate, and to keep moving forward and keep doing the things that you know can help you find answers and help you develop. And that kind of takes us on a nice little full circle there, back to the skipping every day, like 10 days of skipping every day or whatever it's been, helps you get better at skipping. I think for us, like making steps forward, making decisions rather than batting decisions back. Bad decisions today are better than no decision for a month. And so like I think that whole approach of just keep on moving, keep on iterating, and be clear on where you're trying to get to, all in all is helping move things forward. I think it's been very clarifying for me, and I care a lot about whether people what people think of me, perhaps to my detriment. And I think in the last few weeks I've increasingly, because of my focus on these goals, I think I risk not being as liked as I was before. But I've got to keep reminding myself that part of the job of being a founder, a leader, it is my responsibility, or you as a leader or a founder listening, it's my responsibility to make decisions, to make calls, and you can't please all the people all the time. And if you're clear on the goals, and you make decisions based on the goals and the ultimate success of whatever you're trying to achieve, then that's often gonna make some people unhappy or uncomfortable. But if you don't approach things like that, you're not gonna move fast enough, and you're almost certainly going to not achieve the goals you're setting out to do. And I'm not saying try and make an enemy of everyone you know. I definitely don't want to do that. But I think for me, I'm trying to find a correction in my knowledge, learnings, experience to not lean so heavily on trying to be liked, but instead lean towards building a future I want to build for the company and for everyone involved. So yeah, I hope some of that discussion, that little ramble, that long and lengthy ramble has some value in it. Yeah, we got there in the end. Thanks so much for listening to a lot of thinking and thinking aloud this week. I really appreciate it. I wanted to wrap up today's episode with hopefully a slightly more valuable thing than just goodbye, and just jot down a few key actions or takeaways. I think the first one for me is, if I'm ever feeling down or if I'm feeling really anxious, then it's almost always a good idea, if at all possible, to just step outside, get some sunlight on me, and ideally get some exercise in, even if it's only like 10 minutes. I think my body, at least, is naturally very inclined to respond well to that, and it can often counter any of those negative emotions I'm feeling. I think another action I would highly recommend, because it's worked so well for me, is to try to work on your routine and build good habits into your routine. Everyone starts the new year with resolutions and want to do 25 things and maybe only ever achieve half of one of them. I think the best way to really achieve the things you need and to give yourself that structure and stability in life is to build little habits into your daily routine, one at a time, just small incremental steps. And I think that's really been helping me, and I hope that might help you. I don't know how much I should recommend anyone does this, but I think for me, I often procrastinate on big decisions, and I always want to make the right decision. But I think sometimes a decision today that you're not 100% sure on is better than a decision in a few weeks or a few months, or even the worst case scenario is no decision ever being made. Making decisions helps move things forward, and most decisions, at least definitely in startups, and especially if you're building any kind of software, a lot of decisions, the vast majority, can be undone. So I would highly recommend just focusing on making the decisions and moving faster on them if you struggle with decision making as much as I do at times. And then finally, and perhaps the most important, is really, I've found it so helpful to be clearer on the goals that I'm setting, and not just the goals, but the timeline over which to achieve them. And I really would recommend, if you're feeling a bit stuck, or you're trying to make progress and finding things to be a struggle, then or if you feel like you haven't been moving as fast as you want to, or as growing as much as you want to as an individual or as a business, try to take some time out and get clear on those goals and think about the timeline over which you want to achieve them. Give yourself a date in the future where you can check in with yourself and see if you're reaching them, and try to hold yourself accountable. And if you can't, then find someone who can. And well, you're listening to a podcast from someone talking about this, so if you want someone to help you stay accountable, I'm here. Hopefully I can help. If not me, then I might be able to find someone who can. So yeah, thanks again for listening. Episode 3 in the bag. If you've liked it, please do message me, or share it with someone else you might think would find it valuable. Thanks again for listening, and I will catch you next time. Cheers.